Good afternoon. My name is Ken Osborne. I'm the DOE Program Manager for the University Program here in Washington, D.C. I'd like to welcome you to this year's webinar where we roll out our work scopes for this coming year, fiscal year 2017. We're coming off a very successful year where over 90 awards were announced by Secretary Moniz a couple of months ago, worth approximately $92 million. I have a few things that I'd like to announce before I turn the time over to Dr. Gilligan, our Director of our Integration Office. This year, our 2017 FOA will support the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear Innovation, or GAIN, Nuclear Initiative, sorry, or GAIN, which was announced by the White House last November. GAIN provides the nuclear energy community access to technical, regulatory, and financial support to help move new or advanced nuclear reactor technologies into the commercial environment. A number of work scopes this year tie to the GAIN initiative. I encourage you to read the background in Objectives A in the FOA, and it will refer you to the GAIN website and give you more information on the GAIN initiative. Another thing I'd like to announce is that we're very happy that the United Kingdom is going to participate again with us this year. And we do not know the particular work scopes that they're going to participate in. They have our work scopes, and they will be looking at those. And they will be concentrating in Appendix A, the work scopes in Appendix A. We anticipate they'll be participating as they were in years past. They will be putting out a companion solicitation for their universities, and they will be looking for teaming arrangements with U.S. universities. So stand by for further information on this, and as soon as we have information, we'll put it out on our website. The last item I'd like you to be aware of is the DOE has spent millions of dollars on our NEAMS codes and toolkit. And you'll see the NEAMS codes in some of the work scopes that we're proposing. And we are asking that you do not develop any new codes. The DOE has spent millions of dollars on the NEAMS toolkit, and so we don't want anyone developing any new codes, and we would like you to use the existing NEAMS codes. You'll hear more about this in the NEAMS presentation. At this time, I'd like to turn the time over to Dr. John Gilligan for an introduction into the webinar. Dr. Gilligan is a professor and the Executive Associate Dean of Engineering at North Carolina State, and he's the director for the NE's University Programs Integration Office.
I do think we really have to thank the Department of Energy for support of this program over the years in all its aspects, because it's been very successful for the support of the university community, and the opportunity for faculty and students to participate is greatly appreciated, Kenny. And also like to thank Mike Worley, Shane Johnson, and the acting Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy right now, John Kotek. So Kenny, thank you again. I'm John Gilligan, as was mentioned, been involved. This is my 9th round of funding for the NEUP program. We're coming to you from Germantown, Maryland, actually, where most of the DOE staff are located, associated with the nuclear energy program. And as Kenny also mentioned, the purpose of this webinar, as we've done in the past, is to present our next year activities, work scopes, rules and regulations, if you will, that we'll go into in detail for 2017. This is primarily the Consolidated Integrated Nuclear Research FOA, the CINR, so to speak, which truly integrates all of the programs under one umbrella, which includes not only NEUP, but includes NEAMS, as was mentioned, the NEAT program, NEAT Crosscut, NSUF, and GAIN. all acting together to form one integrated unit with opportunities for universities, industry, and national laboratories. There'll be a companion FOA coming out for infrastructure in the near future, which will continue as we've done in the past to support nuclear reactor upgrades as well as equipment grants, and also a scholarship and fellowship IUP program, which hopefully will continue in the future as well. That FOA will come out later. Mentioned last year, I counted up the amount of money that actually went to the universities. It was over $70 million, which is the largest we've ever had last year in 2016 because of the participation of DOE EM as well. That's environmental management. They will also be participating in this round of work scopes, IRPs, et cetera. So the kind of program that we're going to present today, as Greg will present here later, will also be a very robust program for support of universities. And of course, all this depends upon continuing funding at the levels that we're projecting right now. So the kind of programs, of course, that we're talking about here support the main missions of DOE NE, which are fuel cycle research, nuclear reactor technologies, as was mentioned, the NEAMS program, Nuclear Energy Advanced Modeling, which of course relates to the Castle Hub, Innovation Hub, and then of course the coordination with the code development there is very important so that we're not duplicating efforts. So no independent code development is going to be proposed here. And the NEAT Nuclear Energy Enabling Technology, the NEAT program, and the cross-cutting component to that, very important to this whole effort. And again, we're integrating in the NSUF, the Nuclear Science User Facility program this year with NSUF access-only programs and the NEAT NSUF funding programs. And in addition to that, the GAIN facilitator program to enhance commercialization and stimulate industry to work with universities and the national laboratories. Kenny also mentioned the UK is back in with us this year after a one-year hiatus, and so we're very happy to see that that program will continue. We don't know what level exactly that's going to be at, but stay tuned to our website to make sure that you find out what the particulars are with the interactions with UK. So we're looking forward to a very exciting program. I wanted to mention that Derek Ogg is also with us today. Greg Belay, who will be explaining the FOA itself. Drew Thomas is here doing our video and audio, and he'll be the person that you'll be communicating with when you send in your questions. Aaron Gravel here from DOE, and Rory Kennedy. I'm not sure Rory's going to be with us from NSUF or not later, so that'll be a very important addition. And so we're looking forward to a very exciting program this year, very robust program. I did want to mention that for faculty, especially new faculty that are considering this program, it's a very fair program. It's all peer reviewed. We're doing all of our judgments by the competitive peer review process. The success rate for full proposals once you get to that point beyond the pre-applications is, in my world, in our world, university world, is very high. It's on the order of 25% success rate for those that submit full proposals. If you're invited, if you're not invited through the pre-application process, your success rate goes way down to something like less than 5%. So although we do accept proposals that are uninvited through after the pre-application phase, if you're not invited, it doesn't bode well to submit a full proposal because your possibilities for success are pretty small. Last year, we have not presented all of our statistics yet, but we will very shortly. We had a number of new universities that participated last year. Number of new faculty, young faculty, many areas outside of nuclear engineering itself. Probably only about half of the R&D support goes to nuclear engineering faculty. Another half goes to all other scientific and engineering disciplines. So we're trying to stimulate the right participation to address the problems that we need solved in the Office of Nuclear Energy here and Environmental Management. So with that, we'll have an opportunity for questions as time goes on at the end of this session, which actually goes till 2 o'clock. So we'll have plenty of time. But what I want to do now is turn it over to our manager of the NEUP programs, Greg Belay, to talk about the FOA itself and present that to you and go into some detail. If you're familiar with our FOA, that hopefully will be released this week, later this week, you're aware that, of course, the deadlines are things that you have to pay attention to, and Greg will go through all that detail, but we're not projecting too many changes this year compared to what the program was operating very successfully last year. So, Greg, please join us.
My name is Greg Belay. Happy to visit with you this year once again about the FOA. This is for our 2017 iteration. The slides that I have do have quite a bit of information on them. They were generated so that they can be a resource for you at a later point in time. So while I might not speak exactly to every topic that's on the slide, do know that it's there for your information. Once again, consistent with last year, we'll have overview, a few information pieces on work scopes. The important piece will be for policy updates and reminders. Then, of course, we will walk you through the review process, the tools that are available to you, and how to make an appropriate submission. During this webinar, should you have a question, we're using the GoToWebinar interface. You can submit questions in the field as noted. If we don't get that answered for you, we will be compiling all of the questions that we receive, and we'll be posting them on our website at neup.gov. If you have specific questions on individual work scopes, we can address that detail offline, and you'll see presentations on all of those work scopes as we go forward for the next 2 days. Funding mechanisms, again this year for our university contingents, we'll be offering cooperative agreements that will be issued by the Department of Energy. If you're a national laboratory, you will receive direct funding through a work authorization that's managed by DOE. If you are industry, you will have a cooperative agreement issued to you by DOE, and if you involve yourself with NSUF access, that will be a subcontract through BEA. We do have a singular collaborative opportunity this year. Formerly, the NSUF is back with us. You'll be able to apply for R&D support in addition to NSUF access or NSUF access only. We have opportunities for you in both Appendix A and Appendix B. We are going forward with eligibility requirements that most of the community are familiar with. I'll just remind you that these are driven by a need to gain work at a specific point in time. So our opportunities are largely capped at 3 years. We actually have some work scopes this year that are requesting completion within 2 years. I'll detail those for you. We're also looking to continue our encouragement of diverse participation, and a lot of our eligibility requirements are based on past performance criteria such as no-cost time extensions. The formal FOA, which we do anticipate posting on the 10th at close of business, will be posted at grants.gov. We will host a copy of professional courtesy at neup.gov, and we do ask that you apply through neup.gov. Here's some dates for you. As I said, we anticipate releasing the FOA on August 10th. If you are engaged with NSUF, you are required to submit a letter of intent by August the 29th. If you require a pre-application, which would be anything in Appendix A or B, that's due by September the 14th. That will not apply to IRP applications. Full applications, the invitations for that, as far as an invited or uninvited status, will be issued in December of 2016. And the full IRP and R&D applications will be February 15th, 2017. The FOA organization is similar to last year. Appendix A, program and mission supporting work. open to universities for lead. Appendix B, which is only program supporting work, universities, national laboratories, or industries may lead. Appendix C, which is our program directed or IRP scopes, is available for lead by universities. Those elements I just spoke of, program supporting, mission supporting, and program directed, are definitions that we've had in place for many years. Program supporting directly supports any programs. Mission supporting, while support of the mission of NE, may be something that you would consider to be blue sky. They still must have a tie to NE mission. Program directed are those scopes that are actually directed by programs. They are our larger collaborative packages, and they will require direct interaction with the department for success. The awards that we have on offer this year, program supporting up to $800,000, mission supporting $400,000. We are asking for a period of performance of 3 years. If you're asking for R&D support and also have an irradiation and PIE, you may have up to 7 years. There are some specific directions for that in the FOA. For Appendix A, only universities are eligible to lead, although all are eligible to collaborate. We're anticipating on the order of $40 million with approximately 40 awards. Appendix B, which is our NEAT-sponsored crosscut, universities, national laboratories, or industry are eligible to lead. Program size up to $1 million, $500,000 for the R&D component of an NSUF work scope. Period of performance remains the same and is consistent with Appendix A. You are eligible if you are an industry, a national laboratory, or a university to lead. We anticipate $12 million with about 15 awards in that section. For Appendix C, we currently have 7 codified IRP areas. I've listed them here for you. You'll note that for the NE-sponsored IRPs, they are 3 years duration. However, for the EM-sponsored work scopes, they are 2 years duration with a lesser financial commitment. Again, only universities are eligible to lead in Appendix C. This is your lead institution eligibility summary. This spells it out for all of the work scopes that we have, A, B, and C, and also points out that you will find NSUF-sponsored work scopes in Appendix A as well as Appendix B. Application page limits. A 1-page LOI is required if you request NSUF access. That's also if you request access with corresponding R&D. You're required to have an up to 3-page pre-application in Appendix A or B. You're limited to 10 full pages of technical narrative in Appendix A and B unless you are co-joined with an NSUF access application, at which point in time you're given 5 additional pages for 15 total. In Appendix C, we have a 50-page limit for any NE-sponsored IRP and a 20-page limit for the EM-sponsored work scopes. Collaborations are highly encouraged through universities, industry, and national laboratories. We're looking to once again continue enhancing the diversity of MSIs and underrepresented groups. I want to remind you that for university-led applications, except for those work scopes under Appendix B, your non-university collaborators are limited to 20% of the total funds provided by the government, and that is as a composite of collaborators. Funding is for U.S. institutions only, although international organizations are encouraged to collaborate, and as both Kenny and John mentioned, we will have some UK collaboration that we will socialize with the community when it's available. Here's some policy updates and reminders for you. When you submit your pre-application, we consider your team to be final. If you have some exception or extenuating circumstances, we will deal with those on a one-off basis. We anticipate that a collaborator makes a defined material contribution that's critical to the success of the project. So do be cognizant when you're listing collaborators. We do adhere to institutional level for our conflict of interest. You as a PI are responsible for selection of the appropriate work scopes. Your full application must be competed in the work scope to which the pre-application was submitted, and your application can only be submitted in a single work scope area. Applications that are submitted to this FOA are considered to be made to the institution and not the individual. Therefore, if you request a transfer pre-award, it likely will take much additional effort to make that happen, if it can happen at all. For review purposes, although we typically map to the institutional level, we can go to the individual level if required, so do know that that is an opportunity that we have. And you as an applicant are responsible for not exceeding the application limits, and I'll talk about what those are. Any material that's required by the FOA must be submitted by the requested date. If you have additional material that's sent in after that date, it will not be considered. Uninvited applications may be submitted as full applications per the policies outlined in the FOA, and I'll talk more about that and tell you what's required to get a technical review of an uninvited application. I remind you that if you are tied to the NSUF in any way and you are an uninvited applicant, you may not submit a full application. Funding is only provided to domestic entities, will not be provided to international institutions. For university-led applications, as I stated before, the collaborators are limited to no more than 20% unless you're competing in Appendix B, at which point there is no de minimis. Pre-award costs have been available to you for the past few years. We've had very few in the community that have used them. So as a reminder, you may charge allowable costs up to 90 days immediately preceding your award. The recipients must obtain prior approval of the CO for any pre-award costs that are greater than 90 days. We have rescinded the technical review of the applicant budget this year. That is a change to our review paradigm. New this year, NSUF applicants are required to affirm that they can accept the user agreement on submission of the LOI. Also for NSUF applications, all materials and samples must be available within 5 months of project initiation. And you must include a letter of publications that have resulted from previous NSUF supported efforts, and you'll put that in your benefits of collaborations. Finally, on your budget spreadsheet, do not lock your cells. The contracting specialists at DOE need access to that information, and if you choose to lock those cells, those applications may be recused without further review. Here's some submittal guidelines for you. You are ineligible to submit if you are a lead PI on an active IRP, if you are a university PI with 3 or more R&D projects that will be active after December 31st, 2017, or if you have a no-cost extension on any DOE NE-funded project beyond December 31st, 2017. For your pre-applications, university PIs can be included on no more than 6 applications total, with 3 of those as the PI. For full applications, you may compete no more full applications than you would be eligible to win, and you may have no more than 1 IRP or 3 R&D projects at any given time. Any application involving NSUF will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and access-only applications are exempt. For NEET cross-cut funded research, universities, national laboratories, or industry are limited to 3 applications per institution per work scope area. If you're a university PI, your submission in this regard counts toward the pre-application limits in other areas. For IRP applications, you are ineligible to submit if you are designated as a PI for more than 1 currently funded NE research project that will still be active beyond December 31st, 2017. You may not submit an R&D and an IRP application in the same year. As I stated earlier, NSUF projects that request R&D support will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and access-only applications are exempted from the review eligibility criteria. We do have a semi-blind review process consistent with all of the past years. Therefore, in your technical narrative, do not include cost and pricing information. Do not identify individuals by name or institution or teaming collaborators. Official names or titles of facilities that are used to execute scope may only be included if it is an NSUF user facility and you are planning on access to that facility. Cost sharing. If you are a university, cost sharing is encouraged, is not required, and is not an evaluated criteria. However, if you're an industry applicant, you are required to provide 20% of the total allowable costs on your application. The total cost is based on all sources that would come from non-federal. We still have a need to make tie to our data needs for validation. We have a high interest in leveraging, to the extent possible, the expenses that have been made. We provide to you Appendix D and an opportunity to articulate how you tie to those applications. And please do remember, for select NEAM scopes, new codes are not desired. They're only looking at utilization of existing codes that have been previously funded. I'd like to take you quickly through the review process, a few tools that we've been made available to you, and the submission process. Consistent with past years, the pre-applications for program supporting and mission supporting do have an LOI, or when you're with NSUF, we have a pre-application for the PSN-MS, no pre-application for the program directed. Those are all reviewed in a semi-blind process by at least 2 relevancy and 1 peer review at the pre-application stage. Full applications typically receive 2 relevancy and 3 peer reviews. Program-directed applications are reviewed individually, then those individuals are convened as a panel. The outcome of all of that does not constitute a funding selection. It constitutes a recommendation that is delivered to a selection official who makes the final selections. With the exception of NSUF, uninvited pre-applications may be submitted as full applications. If you are uninvited and you choose to submit a full application to get a full technical review in a re-evaluation of your relevancy, you must be adjudicated as at least having high relevance and moderate program priority. The weighting of our scores is consistent with years past. Mission supporting, 80% technical, 20% relevancy. Program supporting, 65%, 35%. Program directed, half and half, 50% technical, 50% relevancy. Anything for NSUF access only is adjudicated in the same way that program supporting is, 65% technical and 35% of your score from relevancy reviewers. We detail all of the criteria for all sections and application types in the FOA, so there should be no questions. Additional relevancy consideration, as we stated earlier, is provided for effective partnerships including MSIs, URGs, industry, and foreign collaborations. Program priority, although it is a separate criteria, it is also judged by the relevancy reviewers. We've included a table that gives you a glance at the FOA that indicates who is eligible to participate as a lead, where you can find those appropriate work scopes, the estimate for the available budget, a maximum award size, and a project duration. Do know that for the project duration, that is an up to. So in some cases, you'll be asked to perform in 2 years. In other cases, you have a little additional time if you're tied with NSUF. We detail the cost shares and the collaboration as well. We've also summed in a table the requirements on document basis for universities, national laboratories, and industry, whether you are a lead or a collaborator. This is also detailed in the FOA, but we hope that this table format is beneficial to you as an at-a-glance piece of information. The eligibility workflow, we have a link for you that'll take you through a eligibility flowchart, asking some simple yes/no questions. If you have additional questions on those opportunities, I've got some contacts for you. All of our federal and technical points of contact can be found at the link that's provided. Feel free to phone those individuals to clarify questions on your scope. You may do so up until the point in time with which the pre-applications close. At that point, the solicitation is considered closed, and we discourage those specific interactions. But if you send us your specific question, we can get that answered. We not only will answer the question for you, we'll post that on the website so that everybody has opportunity on the same information. The points of contact for the IRPs are listed at a different link, but the same rules of engagement apply. Keep in mind you do not have a pre-application in an IRP. So here once again is another listing for the TPOCs. If you have specific procurement questions, you can call Sean Tinsley at DOEID. His web address is listed here. If you have questions on the submittal process itself, there are 2 phone numbers here. That'll take you to Drew Thomas or Ryan Jensen, or you can call me directly at 208-526-8178. Finally, I'd like to close with just the slide that has the dates on it for the anticipated release of the FOA. That's at the close of this webinar on August the 10th. Letters of intent for NSUF, August 29th. Pre-applications by September 14th. Full application invitations will be released before the holiday period in December, and the full applications for the R&D and your IRPs will be due February the 15th. Would be delighted to answer any questions that you have. I'd ask both John Gilligan and perhaps Aaron Gravel and Kenny Osborne to join me at the podium so that we can cover whatever question you might have. Gentlemen?
Okay, to start off, these slides will be posted on NEP.gov directly after the presentations each day. The videos of these webinar presentations will be available within 2 weeks of the close of the webinar. So we'll start right off with some IRP questions. What are the success rates of the IRP program?
The IRP, of course, has been very popular because of the large dollar values and the more directed scope. I think on the average, it's about between 15 and 20%, but it highly is dependent on individual work scopes for the IRPs. Some IRPs we've had as many as 12 to 15 submissions in one winter, and other work scopes for IRPs we've had 4 or 5 submissions or something like that in one winter. So we encourage you to submit to the IRPs. We know it's a big commitment. It's a lot of work because you're bringing in additional collaborators, other universities, industry, et cetera, but it's some of our most important work.
Being such large projects, why don't IRPs have a pre-proposal review process?
Let me just comment first, and then maybe Greg can chime in. It's schedule driven is one aspect, and then also because of the schedule in 2 different ways, because putting together a large proposal for a pre-application and then turning it around very quickly is just impractical because of the amount of time and effort it takes for the larger IRP. We've never had a problem with the pre-application, with the current IRP submission scheduling, in the sense that we give the IRPs much more time to accomplish that, and we've gotten very good proposals and a good submission rate.
John, I don't really have anything to add, but please do remember that we're spending this year's fiscal dollar this year, which means that we have contextual confinement on either end of our process. From the amount of time that we give you to respond to the FOA, put together a competent team and write your application, the time that it takes to find and execute a review panel, and then the time that it takes to actually do the procurement actions. So within the confines of a year, given the size of the programs, that's the time frame that we have. If we were to implement something like a pre-application, that time would all have to come from someplace, and currently it's just not feasible.
I'm confused about the submission limits. It's unclear to me if the maximum number of awards is 3 or the maximum number of pre-applications we could submit is 3.
The maximum number of pre-applications that you can submit is 6. Of those 6, you may be the PI on 3. If you submit 3 pre-applications as the lead PI and currently have no funded R&D, you are eligible to compete all 3 of those. You are only eligible to have 3 R&D projects at any one time, which means if you were selected, invited on 3 of your pre-applications as a principal, but had 2 existing applications that would be active beyond December 31st, 2017, you would have to choose which single application you would compete. And that's all driven out in the workflow. We answer all those questions specifically, and if you're still confused, call any of us after the webinar and we can talk you through it.
The workflow Greg is referring to is on one of the last slides that he presented. There's a link there. On slide 17, it states that applicants may not have more than 3 R&D projects. Is it correct to assume that you mean 3 DOE NE projects, not 3 projects in general?
That is correct. 3 DOE NE sponsored projects.
If the project is awarded and the PI changes his or her institution, can the project be transferred to the new PI's or the PI's new institution?
I'll let Aaron handle that question.
So there is a way for that to happen, but it just depends on the individual circumstance. So I mean, it is a case-by-case review, and you can't say yes or no to that. There is a process, but it just depends. So,
and just to give you a little background, the reason for that is it's because it's awarded to a university. And if you transfer to another university, technically that university did not compete for that award. And so therefore it would have to be awarded non-competitively, and that takes some time and effort to work that out. But that, because it's not awarded to the individual, to the university, it makes it a little trickier.
Just also add, of course, if a faculty member transfers to another university, which happens all the time, a subaward could be put in place from the original university to conduct the research, and that's possible as well. Yeah, let me paraphrase what Kenny said, is basically the capability to conduct the research wherever the money flows has to be there, and that's what Aaron was saying too, that it's a case-by-case basis is how these things are judged. But in general, we're trying to get the money to where the work is done and where they have the capability of doing it.
So you already led into this question, but there's a hypothetical. If DOE does reject a transfer, what would happen to the project?
if it's rejected, then the project is dead. So it no longer be eligible or available for award.
Or if the university, because it's awarded to the university, put up an alternate PI and said they could do the work, and that PI was approved, they could go on with that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be PI centric, but they would have to produce or replace that person with someone with the same capabilities.
On slide 27 and 28, it states that CVs are required for institutional leads. Is it permissible to provide CVs for collaborators as well?
Absolutely, and you would provide those in the benefit of collaborations, and we've got specific guidance for you on the website with how many pages those CVs can have and how many people should be providing CVs.
Which work scopes are required to submit LOIs?
LOIs will be if you respond to work scope A or B and you have NSUF tie, you're required to submit an LOI. LOIs are not defined by work scope. They're defined by having an application that involves an NSUF facility.
And NSUF work scopes, you can find them in Appendix B, NSUF 1. All of those work scopes require an LOI. NSUF 2 access only do, and there's one in Appendix A titled NEAMS 2 that will require an LOI as well.
That is correct.
Who can act as a PI?
We have no restrictions on who cannot. I'll let John describe that from a university perspective.
PIs can be anyone that a university allows to be a PI. That's a local decision, but typically it's a tenure track faculty member. It could be a postdoc, could be if it's allowed locally by that particular university and they're the legitimate originator of that, the material submitted as the proposal. Could be a research staff member, PhD typically, that's permitted by the individual university to conduct that kind of research. We have a number of PIs that fall into all of those categories, either as advanced postdocs, research staff members, tenure track, tenured faculty, of course. So it largely depends upon the judgments of the originating university.
In the draft work scope that was released last week, the Integral Benchmark Evaluations, MSNE1 work scope, was listed with a to be determined. When do you expect that scope will be made available?
We don't have a definitive time frame for that. We're hoping within the next week all those decisions will be made. So we're still crafting some work scopes. As was announced this morning, we just learned that the UK will be participating with us in select work scopes. So as we have that, that will be made available. Unfortunately, we do not have an exact date.
I believe international collaborators can be added after the pre-application process. Can U.S. collaborators also be added to the proposal after the pre-application process?
Yes, collaborators can be added after the pre-application process, but you do need to interface with the integration office. Please remember that we assign reviewers based on the institutional conflict of interest. We've got to affirm that we haven't either used that individual or their presence doesn't disrupt the field, so that while you can add them, you do need permission to do so. That ultimate permission is given by the contracting officer for the solicitation.
If I propose as a PI on an IRP, can I also be a co-PI on an NEUP application?
Yes, you may.
If I am a PI on an ongoing IRP, can I be a co-PI on an NEUP?
If you are a co-PI,
If you are a PI on a currently funded IRP, can you be a
yes,
co-PI?
you can. Absolutely.
You just can't be a lead PI.
You cannot be a lead PI. All of our eligibility restrictions are attributed to the lead PI. And to that end, if you do not execute, it is the lead PI that's held responsible.
It is unclear where we can access all of these documents, whether it's through the NEUP site, DOE-NE, or Office of Science. Could you clarify where we can find supporting information?
The formal copy of the FOA is hosted at grants.gov. A copy of professional courtesy of the FOA is at neup.gov. All of the other resources can be found through neup.gov, and your application will be submitted through neup.gov.
Is international collaboration permitted? Could we budget for an international entity?
International collaboration is permitted, but you may send no money to an international collaborator. So therefore, you may not budget for an international collaborator. Funds can only be sent to domestic entities.